Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Defining Science Fiction. And today I'm going to talk about a very short-lived magazine from the science fiction magazine from the late 1960s. It was a sister magazine to Galaxy Science Fiction. So I'm first going to give a few brief comments regarding Galaxy Science Fiction to sort of set the context. Galaxy Science Fiction was started in 1950. Its parent company was a French-Italian company called World Editions. They hired Horace L. Gold as editor, better known as H.L. Gold. The first issue was October 1950, and its headline story was a serialization of a Clifford D. Simak novel. In the serialization, it was called Time Quarry, and it ran over the next 3 months, so October, November, and December 1950. The book publication was Time and Again, and that's what it's mostly known as. Now, in 1952, the printer, Robert M. Ginn, bought the magazine from World Editions, changed it to Galaxy Publications, and he retained H.L. Gold as editor. But as the 50s went on, H.L. Gold was getting, or at least in the late 1950s, he was beginning to get ill, and Frederick Pohl was brought in to help him. But by 1961, H.L. Gold couldn't continue, and late 1961, Frederick Pohl took over as full editor of Galaxy. Now we sort of speed on to 1967, and Frederick Pohl and Robert Ginn, or better known as Bob Ginn, were out having a drink after work, and Frederick Pohl suggested a magazine of international science fiction, non-English science fiction that would be translated into English. And in the 60s, non-English science fiction was cropping up into magazines and in anthologies. There were material from Russia, the Soviet Union. There was material from Germany and even Japan. So Bob Ginn was not very enthusiastic about this. He didn't think it was a good idea. But after speaking to their distributors, the distributors thought it was a good idea. So Frederick Pohl did a mock-up of a magazine, and it was actually produced for November 1967. And this is the issue here, Volume 1, Number 1, November 1967. Now, I'll take a few moments to go through this. And on the cover it says, it's called International Science Fiction. It was 50 cents. From Italy, France, England, Germany, Australia, Soviet Union, Netherlands. And there's even England in here, because Australia and England, it saved a few pennies on translation. Frederick Pohl wrote the editorial in here. The USSR, or the first USSR offering, is Wanderers and Travelers by none other than Arkady Strigaczi. And then there is a special feature that goes into science fiction around the world, what kind of stuff there is in other countries. And then there's Germany, The Epsilon Problem by Helmuth W. Mommers and Ernst Vleck. France, Uranus by Michel Irwin. Australia, The Disposable Man by Damien Broderick. Italy, Rainy Day Revolution number 39 by Luigi Cozzi. England, Ectasic by Robert Presley. And then another USSR offering, Perpetual Motion by Ilya Varchowski. Netherlands, They Still Jump by J.L. May. Italy, Witchcraft for Beginners by F.C. Gozzini. USSR again. Homunculus by Ilya Varchevsky. And then Germany again. Monster by Helmuth M. Mammers and Ernst Fleck again. And England, The Big Tin God, Philip E. High. And the cover and interior illustrations are by Guan. G-A-U-G-H-A-N. Gone, I think it is. But yeah, so there it is. It's 130 pages long. And there was no set sort of schedule for this. So the second and final issue was released in June 1968, and this is it here. And this time they added a few more countries to the list. But the editor by now, or this time, was Lester Del Rey. Well, the editorial was Lester Del Rey. The editor was still Frederick Pohl, but the editorial was written by Lester Del Rey, who Frederick Pohl had hired as on staff to help him out. They added India, as well as Chile, Poland, and they even had one translated from Esperanto, and it's called In 2112 by J.U. Gissy and J.B. Smith. And again, there are several from Russia, Italy. Poland is Heroic Symphony by G. Altov. Chile is Meccano by Hugh Correa. And again, it is 130 pages. And on the back is, for 10 cents, A Treasury of Science Fiction by Anthony Boucher. They edited a very good collection of science fiction. So yeah, so it only lasted 2 issues. And in Frederick Pohl's memoir, The Way the Future Was, he doesn't say a lot about it, and he just says that, you know, well, he talks about going out for the drink with Bob Ginn, and then he just sort of puts a footnote that said, you know, the sales were abysmal and it was a dumb idea. It was not a good idea to do. But that's it. There's nothing else in there. And in this history of Galaxy Magazine, The Dark and the Light Years, by David L. Rosheim, it was published in 1986 by Advent Publications. It barely gets a mention. There's no details about the magazine whatsoever. But he was way before his time, that's for sure. Frederick Pohl was. But Mike Ashley in... this is a co-edited Mike Ashley and Marshall B. Tim, the Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Weird Fiction magazines. It's basically an encyclopedia of them. And he says here, quote, "The problem with some science fiction is that, for all its cosmic vision, it is often satirical of its own environment and thus does not always work in other surroundings. Add to that the difficulty of translating certain science fictional ideas and the natural American reluctance to accept things that are non-American, you have all the ingredients of a failure." And it did indeed fail, as I said, and as Frederick Pohl thought it was a bad idea. But it was just, I think, an idea before its time. And the cover art by both of them, I believe, is the same cover artist. Yes. By Gaughan. Has anybody heard of this magazine? Or have you read any of the material that's in there? Arkady Strigazzi is definitely a big name these days, but do any of the others ring any bells? I'd love to hear. Thank you, BookTube.